The Ocean Star Majesty gleamed in the Miami morning sun, her white hull stretching nearly 3 football fields along the dock. At 1,200 feet long and 18 decks high, she was one of the most luxurious cruise ships in the world. And today she was carrying my parents on their 30th anniversary celebration. I stood on the pier at 10:45 a.m., watching the final boarding passengers stream up the gangway. Families with excited children, elderly couples with matching luggage, and honeymooners already holding hands and taking selfies. The kind of happy travelers who'd been looking forward to this moment for months. My parents were among them, though their excitement had a different flavor. "Emma, sweetie," Mom called out as she approached with Dad in tow, both pulling expensive matching suitcases I'd never seen before. "I'm so glad you came to see us off." She looked radiant in her new white sundress and designer sunglasses, the kind of effortless elegance that came from spending serious money on vacation clothes. Dad wore a polo shirt that probably cost more than most people's monthly phone bills. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, giving them both hugs. 30 years of marriage deserves a proper celebration. "We're so excited," Mom gushed. 7 days in the Caribbean, 5-star dining every night, shows, dancing, the spa, everything we've dreamed about. Dad checked his expensive new watch. "We should get moving." They stopped boarding at 11:30. "Of course," I agreed. "Don't let me keep you." That's when Mom's expression shifted slightly, taking on that particular tone I'd learned to recognize over the years. "Emma, honey, I need to ask you something and I hope you'll understand." "What's that, Mom?" She glanced at Dad, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Well, the thing is, we've been planning this trip for over a year. Saving up, researching excursions, really building it up in our minds as the perfect romantic getaway." "That sounds wonderful." "It is wonderful. And that's why." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Well, your father and I were talking and we realized this needs to be just the two of us. No distractions, no complications, no reminders of everyday stress." I waited for her to get to the point. "What your mother is trying to say," Dad interjected, "is that we know you've been going through a difficult time lately. The job situation, the financial struggles, living in that tiny apartment. We love you dearly," Mom continued, "but frankly, having you along would just remind us of all the family problems we're trying to escape from for a week." The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire. "You're saying you don't want me to come on your anniversary cruise," I said calmly. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not that we don't want you there," Mom said quickly. "It's just that this is our special time and you understand how it is. There's just no room for failures on this ship." The phrase hit exactly as she'd intended it to. Clean, sharp, and designed to make her position crystal clear. "I understand," I said. "Do you really?" Dad asked with obvious relief. "Because we were worried you might take it the wrong way." "No, I get it completely. This is your romantic getaway, and my presence would somehow diminish that experience for you." "Exactly." Mom beamed. "I knew you'd understand. You're such a mature young woman, even if you haven't quite figured out your career path yet." Dad glanced at his watch again. "We really should board. The captain likes to get moving right on schedule." "Of course," I said. "Have a wonderful time." They both hugged me goodbye, the kind of quick, obligatory hugs you give to distant relatives at family reunions. "We'll bring you back something nice from the gift shop," Mom promised as they headed toward the gangway. I watched them show their boarding passes to the crew member and disappear into the ship's elegant atrium. Through the massive windows I could see them heading for the elevators, probably going straight to their balcony suite to settle in before the mandatory safety drill. The Ocean Star Majesty was truly beautiful. I'd spent 2 years overseeing her construction and design, working with naval architects and interior designers to create the perfect blend of luxury and functionality. Every detail had been carefully planned, from the marble floors in the main lobby to the infinity pools on the upper decks. She was also, as of 18 months ago, my property. I walked to a quiet section of the dock and pulled out my phone. "Captain Morrison? This is Emma Mitchell." "Ms. Mitchell. Good morning. Everything's running smoothly for the 11:30 departure. Beautiful weather for the first day at sea." Captain Morrison was a 30-year veteran of luxury cruising, exactly the kind of experienced professional you wanted running a ship worth $800 million. "That's wonderful to hear. Listen, I need you to do something for me regarding the passengers in Suite 1247. "Of course. How can I help?" At midnight tonight I want their cabin access revoked. Lock them out of their room. There was a brief pause. Ma'am, is there a security concern? No security concern. Personal matter. The passengers are my parents and they've made some choices tonight that require clarification. I see. And you'd like them locked out of their suite at midnight? Exactly. Then have security escort them to the captain's conference room. I'll be joining the ship via helicopter at 12:30 a.m. Understood, Ms. Mitchell. Should I prepare any particular explanation for the passengers? Just tell them the ship's owner needs to speak with them. They'll understand soon enough. I ended the call and looked back at the Ocean Star Majesty. In about an hour she'd be pulling away from the dock with 3,000 passengers aboard, including 2 people who'd just told their daughter there was no room for failures on their dream vacation. The irony was about to become delicious. By 11:30 a.m., the ship's horn was blasting its departure signal. I watched from the dock as the massive vessel slowly pulled away from the pier, her engines thrumming with quiet power. From this distance I could see passengers lining the railings, waving goodbye to Miami and hello to 7 days of luxury. I spent the rest of the day at my downtown office, handling routine business for Maritime Holdings, the company I'd built around luxury cruise operations. 3 ships, 12 Caribbean routes and partnerships with resorts on 6 islands. Not bad for someone who'd started with a single yacht charter business 5 years ago. At 11:45 p.m., I was in the helicopter lifting off from Miami Executive Airport, heading toward the coordinates where Ocean Star Majesty was anchored for the night. Below us, the ship looked like a floating city, blazing with lights against the dark Atlantic. Beautiful night for flying, Ms. Mitchell, the pilot commented through the headset. Perfect night, I agreed. At exactly 12:30 a.m., we touched down on the ship's helicopter pad. Captain Morrison was waiting for me with his characteristic professionalism. Ms. Mitchell, welcome aboard. Your parents are in the conference room as requested. How did they react to being locked out? Confused at first, then increasingly agitated. They demanded to speak with the manager, the cruise director, and finally with me. That's when I explained that the ship's owner had requested a meeting. Did they ask who the owner was? Captain Morrison smiled slightly. I told them they'd find out soon enough. We walked through the ship's elegant corridors toward the conference room. Even at this late hour, the Ocean Star maintained her atmosphere of quiet luxury, soft lighting, marble accents, and the kind of attention to detail that made guests feel like royalty. The conference room was located on Deck 12, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. As we approached, I could hear raised voices from inside. This is absolutely unacceptable. Dad's voice carried through the door. We paid good money for this cruise and now you're treating us like criminals. Richard, calm down, Mom's voice was strained. I'm sure there's been some kind of mistake. Captain Morrison knocked and opened the door. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson? The ship's owner is here to speak with you. I walked into the room. The effect was immediate and devastating. Mom's face went through several distinct phases: confusion, recognition, and then a peculiar gray color I'd never seen before. Dad's mouth fell open and stayed that way. Good evening, Mom. Dad. I hope you enjoyed your first day at sea. Emma. Mom's voice came out as barely a whisper. What are you doing here? I own this ship, I said simply. Actually, I own the entire Ocean Star Cruise Line. Has for about 18 months now. Dad found his voice first. That's impossible. Is it? Or did you just never pay attention when I tried to tell you about my work? I walked to the conference table and sat down across from them. They remained standing, looking like they'd been struck by lightning. Maritime Holdings, I continued, is my company. We operate 3 luxury cruise ships and 12 resort partnerships throughout the Caribbean. Last year's gross revenue was approximately $340 million. Mom sank into a chair. $340 million? The cruise industry is surprisingly profitable when you focus on luxury experiences rather than mass market volume. Dad was staring at me like I might be in hallucination. Emma, this can't be real. You do computer stuff. Marketing. I do digital marketing for luxury travel experiences. That's how I built the business. Understanding what affluent travelers want and how to reach them online. But you live in that tiny apartment, Mom said weakly. I live in a downtown condo that's convenient to my office and the marina where I keep my business vessels. It's not tiny, it's efficient. And that old car you drive? My Tesla Model S is 3 years old. I prefer reliable transportation over flashy displays. Captain Morrison cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, should I leave you to your family discussion? Please stay, Captain. I want my parents to understand exactly who they're dealing with. I turned back to Mom and Dad, who were both staring at me like I'd just revealed I was secretly a movie star. This afternoon, when you told me there was no room for failures on this ship, I realized we needed to have a conversation about success and failure. Emma, I didn't mean, Mom started. You meant exactly what you said. You've spent the last 2 years assuming I was struggling financially, professionally, and personally. Every family gathering, every phone call, every interaction has been filtered through your assumption that I'm somehow failing at life. Because you never told us about any of this. Dad protested. I tried to tell you. Remember Christmas dinner when I mentioned the new ship acquisition? You told me to stop daydreaming and focus on getting a real job. I thought you were talking about buying a boat or something. I was talking about purchasing the Ocean Star Serenity for $280 million. It was the largest acquisition in my company's history. Mom made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. Remember Easter when I mentioned the resort partnerships? You suggested I stop wasting time with travel fantasies and apply for positions at established companies. We thought you were talking about vacation planning, Mom said weakly. I was talking about exclusive partnerships with 5-star resorts that generate $40 million in annual revenue for Maritime Holdings. Dad slumped in his chair. All this time we thought you were barely making ends meet. While I was actually building one of the most successful luxury cruise operations in the Caribbean. Emma, Mom said, and her voice had changed completely. The condescending tone was gone, replaced by something much smaller. Why didn't you correct us? Why didn't you make us understand? Because every time I tried to share professional excitement with you, you'd redirect the conversation to my supposed failures. It became easier to let you think what you wanted to think. I stood up and walked to the windows, looking out at the dark ocean. Do you know what the hardest part has been? Not the business challenges, not the financial risks, not the 18-hour workdays building this company. What? Dad asked quietly. The hardest part has been succeeding beyond my wildest dreams while my own parents assumed I was failing. Do you have any idea how lonely that is? The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle sound of the ship moving through the water. This morning, I continued, when you told me there was no room for failures on this ship, I realized something important. What's that? Mom whispered. You were right. There is no room for failures on this ship. But you got the failure part backwards. I turned back to face them. The failure isn't mine. It's yours. You failed to see your daughter clearly. You failed to listen when I tried to share my successes. You failed to believe I could build something meaningful. Dad started crying. Emma, I'm so sorry. And most importantly, I continued, you failed to love me unconditionally. Your love came with conditions, that I fit into your narrow definition of success, that I make you proud in ways you could understand and brag about to your friends. That's not true, Mom protested through her own tears. Isn't it? This morning you literally told me I couldn't come on your anniversary cruise because my presence would remind you of family problems. We didn't mean it that way. You meant it exactly that way. And that's fine. Parents are allowed to have imperfect love. But children are also allowed to have boundaries. I pulled an envelope from my jacket and placed it on the conference table. What's that? Dad asked. It's your early 30th anniversary present. Ownership papers for a cottage in Key West. Fully renovated, waterfront view, perfect for retirement. Mom opened the envelope with shaking hands and stared at the deed. Emma, this must have cost. It doesn't matter what it cost. What matters is that despite everything that happened today, you're still my parents and I still love you. How can you give us this after what we said? Dad asked. Because that's what unconditional love looks like. I don't give it to you because you've earned it or because you understand my worth. I give it to you because you're my family. Captain Morrison had remained quietly professional throughout this entire exchange, but I could see the slight smile on his face. Now, I continued, we have some decisions to make about the rest of this cruise. What kind of decisions? Mom asked nervously. Well, you can continue your anniversary celebration in your original suite with my compliments. All your meals, excursions, and spa treatments are upgraded to the premium package. And the alternative? Dad asked. There is no alternative. You're going to enjoy your anniversary cruise, and I'm going to join you for the rest of the week as your daughter. Not as the ship owner, not as the successful businesswoman you didn't know existed, but as Emma who loves you both despite your flaws. You're staying for the whole cruise? Mom asked with obvious hope. I cleared my calendar. Maritime Holdings can run itself for a week. I walked around the table and hugged them both. But there are going to be some changes in how we communicate going forward. What kind of changes? Dad asked. When I share professional news with you, you're going to listen. When I talk about my work, you're going to ask questions instead of offering unsolicited career advice. And you're never again going to assume I'm failing just because my success doesn't look like what you expected. We promise, Mom said immediately. We absolutely promise, Dad agreed. Captain Morrison stepped forward. Ms. Mitchell, should I have your parents escorted back to their suite? Please do. And Captain? Prepare the owner's suite for occupancy. I'll be staying aboard for the remainder of this cruise. As we walked back through the ship's corridors, I realized that the real victory wasn't proving my success to my parents. It was finally having the chance to build a relationship based on honesty instead of assumptions. The Ocean Star Majesty continued her journey through the Caribbean night, carrying 3,000 passengers toward a week of luxury and relaxation. But for 3 of those passengers, the real journey was just beginning, toward understanding, acceptance, and the kind of love that doesn't come with conditions. Later that night, as I stood on the deck of my ship looking out at the stars, I reflected on what had happened. Sometimes the most important revelations don't happen in boardrooms or at award ceremonies. Sometimes they happen at midnight on a ship in the middle of the ocean, when 2 parents finally see their daughter clearly for the first time, and a daughter learns that love, real, unconditional love, is the most valuable thing any of us can own.